Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to talk about the last character, the only one I haven't covered in the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, Thieves Gallery content element that is on D&D Beyond, and we're going to talk about Sofina. All right. So these are incredibly historic stat blocks that are being placed on D&D Beyond, and this is opening up this continued use of D&D Beyond, where D&D canon is now split between the D&D canon hardback, and the D&D canon hardback is irreplaceable, and it will never be replaced. It'll be printed on paper for a millennia, in my opinion. It'll be, and a lot of people are like, Scott, what do you mean by secular, right? And so just so you're aware, like, I really think that Dungeons & Dragons breaks a lot of historical ground for seculars, right? So basically, I know this sounds strange, but hey, you're here. This is Scott Garibay, baby. You're going to hear things you ain't going to hear nowhere else, because I don't think about Dungeons & Dragons the way anybody else does, right? So basically what Dungeons & Dragons is doing, in my humble opinion, is they're giving secular advantages and benefits to people that the sacred community has given to people of faith for millennia, right? Hope, being able to connect with imagination, community, kindness and tolerance, right? Like, basically, none of this is new for sacred people. Like, Jesus told me, hey, love everybody, right? This is Gary Gygax coming to faithless, godless people and saying, hey, through identity, I'm going to teach you kindness and tolerance. And I really think that's what's happening, right? And so these stat blocks are incredibly important, right? Because one of the things is they're tying image, right? And you're like, what's that got to do with, why are you always talking about the difference between sacred and secular? Well, like, in sacred world, like, God was like, you're made in my image. It's the only thing that gives you value, right? And here we see these stat blocks in the D&D Beyond, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Thieves Gallery content element, saying these characters are not like any character you've ever had before. Like, they'll talk about, like, Elminster, right? Oh, and does anybody in the world know who Elminster is who's not a deep in the weeds Dungeons & Dragons fan? No, people don't know Elminster, right? Do people know Pikachu? Right? Because he's got a movie. He's on the big screen and the small screen. These stat blocks, these characters are carrying Hollywood images directly into, for realsies, Forgotten Realms, right? Every single time you say Sofina, right, that is Sofina in Dungeons and Dragons, exactly the same as being delivered on the Hollywood big screen. Image is a huge deal, right? And it makes these stat blocks more valuable than any non-player character that's ever been delivered. All right, so let's talk about Sofina. Oh my gosh, I wrongly told you earlier that Forge Fitzwilliams was the heavy hitter in this in the D&D Beyond, Dungeons and Dragons, in the D&D Beyond, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Thieves Gallery content element. That's wrong. Thay is Sofina, this red wizard of Thay, is way more powerful than Forge Fitzwilliams. He is a CR10, she is a CR15. She throws down. This chick will drop death and fear, and actually her lore block, right? Actually, her lore segment of her stat block, and actually our stat block doesn't have the lore, right? So we're starting to learn, like, what is a character, right? And they're like, a character is a lore segment and a stat block and a name and an image. This is incredibly important, right? Like, and I really think going forward, this is going to start to reshape things. Like, if you, like, one of the things I really think, we are, and this is why I love Dungeons & Dragons and absolutely detest the OSR. Dungeons & Dragons catapults people to a brighter future. And that is about kindness and tolerance. The OSR cruelly anchors people to a nostalgic past and encourages them to be prejudiced, in my opinion, extremely exclusionary. They're like, these fantasy races and fantasy species can't be in the game. It's important. It's important that we exclude these. AIs cannot make art the way, made creators cannot make art the way human creators can. It's just, you're not allowed to do this. It's really important that we have a powerful platform to exclude people with. And that's what the OSR is, in my humble opinion, right? But it's incredible, right? So here we have a female villain, right? Straight up evil, right? I think she's specifically neutral evil. She is CR15, far more powerful than Forge Fitzwilliam's CR10. And then also, I just wanted to point this out. Every single hero, okay, is the majority of the heroes, Holga Kilgore, Egan Darvis, Simon Aumer, Doric, they are all CR5, okay? Zank Yendar is CR10. He's a hero, okay? But these villains are CR10 and CR15, far more powerful than the player characters, than the heroes from the movie, right? And I think this is a reflection of D&D overall, right? Where D&D is like, your player characters are always going to be coming against foes that are far more dangerous and far more villainous. And why is this? Well, it's Gary's legacy echoing right now in D&D 5e, right? And again, the OSR will say, oh, we don't forget Gary Gygax. They absolutely forget the name. They forget his name. They forget his face. They forget everything he ever stood for. He was progressive and he was inclusionary, right? And they are regressive and exclusionary, and you could see this everywhere, and everywhere in the OSR in the OSR games, in my humble opinion. And it's incredible how dedicated to inclusion Dungeons and Dragons is. And so and basically it is, Dungeons and Dragons is teaching the player characters in regular games, you will defeat and fight and literally to your death save tyrants that are more powerful than you. That is an incredibly important story. That is an incredibly important directive from Gary Gygax, saying you are going to come across horrible monsters that are more powerful than you in IRL, right? And we want to get you real used to play in D&D to overcoming them and dropping them, right? And again, this is all coming from Gary's legacy, right? So Gary's legacy is American, right? And we do not suffer tyrants here, right? Russia, right now, they're suffering a tyrant, right? You put that fool in America, that don't last 10 minutes, right? The dudes in Texas will take care of that in 10 minutes, right? We don't not have tyrants in America. Dudes in Texas will take care of that problem right quick, right? We do not suffer tyrants. We do not, in America, we do not worry about CR10 and CR15 monsters, even if we're only CR5. We take care of business, right? And Dungeons and Dragons is sending this message. They're like, Sofina is CR15. Every single hero who is supposed to fight her is CR5, right? And that's Gary calling from the grave and saying, you take monsters, right, that are 2 or 3 times more powerful than them, and you put them in the dirt. You put them in the dirt. That's what happens. And America has definitely learned this lesson, but we're starting to forget. We got a coward president right now, right? So Gary shouts from the grave, you put them in the dirt. Monsters that are 2 or 3 times more powerful than you. We do not suffer monsters in America that are villains who are more powerful than us, right? It's just, we don't suffer it. Right? We just don't, right? And I think this is a lesson from, and whereas Russia right now, they're like, oh yeah, tyrant, yeah, you're good. Keep doing your thing, man. In America, we just don't do that, right? And this is a tradition in America that I feel Gary is very clearly saying, oh, if the monster's 2 or 3 times more powerful than you, not a problem. Fight them. Take care of it, right? That's the whole of it, right? And so this Sofina, absolutely incredible, right? She is a super villain, right? So let's talk about her. CR15, Swarm of meteors. She will carve a hole in the sky and pull meteors from space to destroy her villains, or anybody who stands against her villainy, right? She has a summon wraith spell that pulls a CR5 wraith, right? She's like, oh, I see you, Simon Armor. You are CR5. Here's my wraith. I'm gonna go like kill the rest of your friends with a swarm of meteors, and you can deal with my with my summoned pet, who's as powerful as you are, right? Absolutely wrecker, right? Sofina, she is a. Let's get it all the way there. She is a red wizard of Thay. It says in her that she is a canny operator. She is dedicated to necromancy, right? She uses death and fear as a tool, right? Gary is shouting from the grave. He's saying, oh, here's a villain, right, that uses death and fear as a tool. We're surrounded by people right now in America with villains who are using death and fear to control, right? Like, and it's a practice. It's saying, do not suffer tyrants, do not suffer monsters. Know what to do with them, right? Put them at 0 hit points. Yep, right? Like, and it's incredible to me how strong everything that's coming out of D&D now is, and how useful it is, right? And how it says, you are a human. D&D says, you are a human being. We want to catapult you into the future. OSR is like, you are a human being. We want to anchor you and make sure you never move from one nostalgic moment of your life, right? And we really want you to celebrate exclusion with us. Exclusion of fantasy races, exclusion of fantasy species, exclusions of AIs, made creators versus born creators. And D&D is the exact opposite. It's like inclusion. Here, right? Inclusion of every gender, inclusion of every race, inclusion of every preference. And it's in every line, in every product. And at the same time, it arcs all the way back to Gary's legacy of him from day one saying D&D is about inclusion. And we will use identity as a powerful tool to help you become a better person. In my humble opinion, Dungeons & Dragons from day one was about human flourishment. It is a human flourishment tool that Gary disguised as a game. And we see it in every single thing. And I want to say thank you for letting me share my thoughts on the D&D Beyond, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Thieves Gallery, content element. And I say each one of those contains powerful aids to you as a person. Right? And the OSR is like, let's chop some goblins in half. It is astounding to me. You can see history echoed in every single line they're writing. And what I'm excited about is, I think Amanda Heyman, F. Wesley Snyder, there were 25 people who built these stat blocks for the movie, right? And every single one of them is looking at Gary's legacy and saying, we have to do more. We have to reflect history. We have to reflect progressivism and inclusion in this. We have to echo Gary's legacy, and that's what the D&D Beyond, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Thieves Gallery content element is. It is a powerful, like, shining beacon of awesome, right? And it has to be there because a month ago the OSR was like, let's end D&D. And I ain't for that, right? I ain't for D&D be gone. I ain't for people who echo the threats of American evangelicals from the 1980s saying literally the same words and then echoing the literal book burnings with digital book burnings, right? And this is a celebration, and we are moving to and everything on D&D Beyond is like, hey, if people told you to delete your account, D&D Beyond is literally prepping you. They are doing a red carpet to a powerful movie experience, right? Where the product is the world and the game is something, and the experiencing Dungeons & Dragons on the large screen is this huge celebration. And I'm so here for it. I'm so ready. And I'm just really excited. And when I look at this D&D Beyond content, I'm seeing what Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro knew from the start. The OSRs are like, oh no, D&D's going to become digital. Ooh, I only like physical books. And I'm seeing, okay, I get my D&D canon hardback physical book. Yay, right? And then D&D Beyond has genuinely useful things, right? This is unprecedented. We've never seen Hollywood images attached to tabletop role-playing game characters that go directly into the actual world, right into Forgotten Realms, right? Michelle Rodriguez is a character in, when Holga Kilgore is described, you are describing Michelle Rodriguez, and you will be describing her 300 years from now when this product is celebrated, right? Whereas the OSR, everything they do is forgotten 3 weeks later. And that's why I have to continue to scramble and look for new champions, right? Like Kelsey Dion, who may be a very new, powerful, productive champion for the OSR. Woo! We are there, man. I'm very, very excited about this. Please consider like, subscribing, and yes, every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.